Welcome to the Straight from the Source's Mouth podcast. Frank talk about sex and dating.
Hello, and welcome to episode number 31 of season 2. My name is Tamara, and you're listening to the Straight from the Source's Mouth podcast. Today's guest is Chel. We'll be talking about all things related to squirting, including misconceptions, which was the reason I chose to do this topic. So if you like this episode, be sure to tell your friends about it and rate it as well. Thanks for joining me today, Chel.
Thank you for having me, Tamara.
Yes, I wanted to do this topic, as I said in the beginning, because a guy was with a woman who sounds like a bit more experienced than him, and he wasn't expecting it. He went over there just to hang out or whatever, and she immediately started coming on to him, and so he's like, oh, I guess this is happening. But she ended up squirting, and he was like freaked out, and like it was like he was convinced she peed on him, and he was like so embarrassed and just like tried like just pretty much got out of there as fast as he could. And I talked to him later about potentially apologizing and like, just explaining that it's definitely not pee, which he had thought it was. So this is the reason for doing the topic. And then I reached out, and Chel has some expertise in this as well. And I've experienced it as well. But I think we both talked about, we didn't know what it was either when we first did. Do you want to share what you were saying earlier?
Oh, yeah, easily. Completely agreed that at first you have no idea what's going on with you. Your body turns into this crazy tuning fork, and all of a sudden you think like, oh my God, I'm going to pee, because it is that spastic. And then, of course, with spastic, you automatically think bladder. But because it is vibrating you to such an extreme. When I was in my early 20s, the first time it happened, I really thought I was peeing on the guy, and I was freaking out and very apologetic and, oh my God, I'm gonna pee, oh my God, get out, kind of thing. And when I started doing more research, especially as I was going back to school for my master's programs, and I wanted to be the next Dr. Ruth at one point. So I've done a lot of research on it. And it turned out that I had a gift for that special spot like nobody else. The more I got comfortable with my body, and the more that I got comfortable with really releasing myself and enjoying sex for what it is, instead of, it wasn't until my now permanent husband that I ever really associated sex with emotions. So I think that was part of it too, that I was there to enjoy myself. If it, of course, as long as it's safe and consensual and everything else, if I can be that comfortable with myself, I have no problem getting there. But apparently my starter husband was not the place to do that with. My permanent husband now, he can hit it every time. I'm usually a particular spot or away. But between the husbands, had a situation with my best friend and her husband, and I squirted. I told them it was going to happen ahead of time if I got super comfortable. And she and I, all the way through college, all the way through the years, because I'm old now, have always played with each other a little bit. She was like, okay, is it real? Is it myth? And even stuck her nose down in the wet spot. And she's like, it doesn't smell. And she's like, and it's not yellow. And it's, she was looking up everything she could find to try and see if the situation was what she thought it was. And then she was telling me, and keep in mind that we've been best friends since we were like 18 years old. We're now 46. At the time that this happened, we were 38. I think we were 38. And she was telling me that she has never squirted. So I got her comfortable enough and relaxed enough. Relaxing is the biggest part. And letting go of control for so many women is so hard, because your mind is in a million places. You're asking yourself 100 questions about what do things look like? Is this lighting good? Do I look fat? Is there a weird smell? Did I wash up enough? Did I pluck every single hair that the waxer didn't get? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we just have a really big problem getting out of our own way enough to be comfortable enough to do it to begin with. lo and behold, at 38 years old, I got my best friend to squirt for the first time. And she says it's been nonstop ever since, now that she understands how relaxed she really has to get.
Very promising, because I do have friends that have never done it either, and they're trying. And one that was going to be on with us is in that same boat, and she's definitely a control freak, so that's probably her issue as well. So, and is there, what you said, there's a certain position works for you? Do you mind sharing what that is, just in case it works for other people?
Absolutely. Well, I have to be on top. And I have to essentially be grinding. It can't be jackrabbit style sex from behind. Sometimes every blue moon it works from behind, but they have to hit the exact spot. So if you put your finger in roughly half an inch, and it's almost it when it starts to get stimulated, it gets ruddy like a walnut, like the exterior of a walnut, and just press, massage, ramrod it if that's your style. However you can get that walnut to engorge more and more and more, that's when it goes off. I can make it happen in like 5 seconds if I'm in the shower with a toy. Or I can be on top, because I will grind in a certain way to make sure that that engorgement is getting hit over and over and over again the way I want.
Okay. Yeah, and that's I've referenced Make Love Not Porn, a site that talks about actual, like, real sex versus porn sex, and how and they do talk about the consistency of hitting the same spot. So I can see where that'd be helpful. And I didn't even know you did all this research, so even better to have you on so we can talk about all the stuff. Yeah, because I think I mentioned before we started recording that I've had the same thing where I wasn't sure. I thought I was peeing, because I'm like, it's getting really wet down there. Like, I don't know what's happening. And I was always kind of embarrassed. And then one guy finally said, like, "Oh, you squirted." And I was like, "Oh, I get." And I went back to, like, okay, I've been doing that for a while. But yeah, it's definitely like a certain, and I'm assuming you're referring to the G spot, which that turns into
Completely.
that walnut thing. Because yeah, and I've heard that it's not always like it could be 2 inches in, an inch in. There's like different for different women how far inside it is, but it's definitely at the top of the body, like, when I did an episode on oral sex, and the guy said he does like a come here motion, like from the inside to feel it. So just for
My husband will take 2 fingers and just sit there and almost squeeze them together and push at the same time, and he can get me every time that way.
okay.
But when we met, he was like, "Oh, you're a squirter," and he was all excited. I was like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. And it's like, it's becoming a big thing. I mean, maybe it's been a big thing for a while, but a lot of people are talking about it right now. And like half the camp is like, thinks it's like really cool. Like guys, like you said, like they just think it's like the best thing ever. And this guy that told me that I was one, he immediately washed the sheets. So I'm thinking it wasn't his favorite thing, just because it made more of a mess. And I don't know.
It is messy.
Yeah. And I know there's like we talked about this, some movies that depict it, like the show Californication has people like, and it goes a distance. And then there was another a remake or depicting how Motley Crue came to be. There was a episode in there where she squirts in front of like a whole room of people or something. So it's
Yes.
definitely a hot topic nowadays. So I just wanted to, like I said, get rid of the myths and misconceptions about this. So
well, I appreciate that.
yeah. And I know we're in a similar, we're in a Facebook group together. So that's how we've come to talk about this topic. So, and that, and that group seems to be the same. It's like half that have done it and like know all about it, and the other half are like, what? So.
Well, we should put a poll up. Who's done it? Who hasn't? I mean, we put up plenty of memes that say antagonizing both sides, just because it's fun for us to see all the different reactions. But maybe we should put a real poll up and say, what do you guys think? And of course, everyone be mindful of each other. Don't be berating at all. Or dismissive. But when it really happens for someone and they have embraced it, that orgasm is better than any other orgasm for me.
Yeah.
I would, and the people I've talked to about it, to just give some background real quick, I used to, right out of college, I had a degree in architecture. I went to work for a specific company. I was making $27,500 living in Washington, D.C., and was not making ends meet because $27,500 is BS. So I was still bartending at night, and I had these two bar regulars who were like, we love your personality. You can talk about anything. You're not bashful. Like, you are just in your face and you are direct. And I was like, okay, what do you want? And they were like, come work for us. And I was like, I have enough going on. I'm just too busy. They're like, okay, we'll just host one of those home parties for us. And I went, all right. They made $5,000 in 4 hours off of me and my friends. Wow. For selling sex toys. And I was like, are you kidding me? In a weekend? So I started slinging sex toys for them. And then I moved. I've moved a lot, being a military brat and then marrying military. So we're down in Florida, and I'm like, okay, I need to get my master's because I'm not making crap without it. Still doing the sex toy company switched my entire frame of reference. I'm getting asked all these questions, how to, what to, why not? And I'm like, you know what? I can do this better. So I switched my degrees, and then I promptly got a criminology and a psychology degree and a criminology and a psychology master's. I was going to be the next Dr. Ruth. Like, I was so excited to be able to have real pleasures be embraced by women who know their bodies, who are comfortable no matter what the setting, and can make it work no matter how big, how small, how whatever, and have them achieve a way in order to even get past some of their past traumas. Because owning yourself, owning your sexuality, owning your own orgasms is a very strong way to get past a lot of those types of traumas. Not all traumas, but again, we're specifically focused on those kinds of traumas. So I was moving forward with this, and then in my research, I found real issues, which is why I stepped away from the Dr. Ruth side and then went to the pedophile side. So I like dissecting neurotransmitters in pedophiles now to figure out what makes them do the things they do, why it's the number one recidivism, et cetera, and protect, especially our women and children, and even the young boys that are either subjected to it directly or witness it firsthand, because they either have reoccurrence themselves of being abused, or they are the perpetrators, because the number one commonality, sexual deviant behavior, is being subjected to it or witnessing it firsthand. So I went that route instead. But I still kept on I love all the Dr. Ruth stuff. And again, I'm aging myself. I should go with the Berman sisters. I want to say that's who it is, but they are two phenomenal doctors that help you own your sexuality and have come up with 100 different toys that really make you have to learn yourself. If you don't learn your body and learn what it feels like to do 100 different things, then you're never going to get to true sexual satisfaction, in my mind.
Yeah. I love all the things you just said. And I know Dr. Ruth too. You grew up listening to it, so I'm actually a little older than you. So, but yeah. So, and yeah, I've heard that too. And a lot of people deal with trauma, and that's why they can't enjoy it. So knowing their bodies kind of releases them of that trauma, and being powerful and taking ownership of what they want and asking for it versus feeling like the victim or, being, yeah. So.
I'm all about empowering everyone on the planet to do whatever makes them feel the best, especially in the sexual arena, as long as they are not subjecting someone to something that they don't want. It must be safe. It must be consensual, yada, yada, yada. Not to gloss over that, but let's empower especially our women who don't know enough about their bodies.
Yeah. And I've done, that's pretty much why I started this podcast, is to normalize sex. Women like it just as much as men. we shouldn't have a
Agreed.
double standard where we get, we're looked down on because we like sex or have sex with more than one person, and guys can do it all the time.
100%.
Yeah. So that is the reason for this podcast. So I'm glad and we just randomly found each other, but things always work out that way. So I'm glad you're also did all the research too. So yeah. And yeah, I mean, we pretty much boiled it down, I guess. Like, you have to feel comfortable. And I haven't had the same like vibrational experience, but I've definitely squirted before. But it was more of, I think, like you were saying, the ramming part just kind of like happens. But I don't know if I have vibrated necessarily. And I actually started doing stand-up comedy first, and I talk about sex and dating there. And my podcast hasn't been that funny, but I do stand up, so you can watch it there. But I talk about having the best orgasm ever when I was 18, and I haven't had that one since. But it was like, it felt like hot liquid, like rushing through my entire body for like a minute. But it was during oral sex, and he actually had to like tie my hands because I kept stopping him when it got close. Like, I couldn't stand it. And then as soon as he like stopped me from stopping him, I had that. But then I think because he was my first love and it took me like 2 years to get over him, I haven't let myself go there with anyone else to have that amazing orgasm again. So I used to make fun of it in my stand-up, but it's yeah, it's
But
like,
it's so rare I mean, first of all, the statistics, your first orgasm isn't likely until the age of 26 plus.
yeah. Well, it wasn't
Um,
my first. It's my first like amazing one. Like, I had some, but it was like the first one where it was like literally like a minute straight, like the tantric one or something.
oh my God. Yes, those are the best. And I gotta say that you are probably completely dead on with the emotional attachment. I had orgasms and squirting and everything else all over the place, especially after my starter husband. Um, but it wasn't until my permanent husband that I I had very intense, like vibrating orgasms because I was finally able to emotionally attach what I already knew about my body. So no, I think you are hitting the nail on the head there, that probably had a lot to do with it. But applause to you for having orgasms at 18 because nobody has it. Well, I can't say nobody, but a lot of people don't get
Yeah. Well,
get that thrill.
yeah, actually, I mentioned this in my welcome episode that my majority of the time co-host, I call her Carissa, she grew up religious, and I didn't have sex till she was married, and this was my first boyfriend ever, but I was his second partner, so he knew exactly what he was doing, and we were together for 1.5 years. So I learned all this stuff and learned to enjoy it, with my first partner. And I had like you said, the emotional stuff too. So I was definitely lucky in that department. Although then I never really, let myself get that close to anyone again after being hurt. So I guess,
No,
but yeah.
it's hard.
Yeah. And it's been a while, so I could move on with that and eventually do that. But yeah. All right. So what else should we talk about? We've kind of it's like summarized a lot, but is there any other thing in your research that you think people should know about, or whatever you want to?
I almost wish that I know you can see me, but I know the audience can't. So I'm making a lot of facial expressions instead of yes, no, confirming, validating. Um, I'm looking for a different verbiage, but so most of the things I think that you are completely in line with, especially with the normalizing sex, normalizing that it should not be, um, it should not be a double standard. Hypocrisy makes me nuts on every side, but I'm not going to say but because that means I don't agree with that. I completely agree with that. I just want to add to it. And I really want, if women especially would get in tune with their own bodies, it would make the mindsets change on so many different things because we can show men or even other women in the bedroom what they're capable of and why it shouldn't be a double standard. Showing my best friend that she could squirt too, completely blew her mind. She was anti all of it right up until she did it herself because she was not able to get comfortable with herself, know her body that well. And I was like, you have to relax. You have to figure out what feels good to you. You know, you have to explore if you want to go anywhere. But the auto naysayers are a huge problem. Just looking at and study the anatomy. I mean, I took some insane anatomy classes for sexualization, and most people go, oh, it's all in the clit. Well, the clit might be this little nubby thing right here, but did you know that when it gets excited, it does this on both sides all the way down? I say does this like everybody can see my hand.
Yeah.
So you have where your clit is, and everyone's like, don't press it like a doorbell.
And that's the tip of
But
the iceberg, you're saying.
that's the definite tip of the iceberg. The iceberg spreads out, and all 8,000 nerve endings, it's technically like 6,800, but semantics. It takes the, let's see, how can we,
It, it
so it
engorges.
takes
Like,
the slinkies. So say that the two prongs of the clit, so you have your nub, then you have the two prongs of the clit, that makes the entire organ. They then expand like you're stretching out the slinky all the way straight on each of the prongs, all the way down the vaginal canal, which is why you can orgasm from um, full penetration once you are excited enough to have all of those nerve endings go down each side of your vaginal canal. Most people don't know enough about the anatomy in order to figure out why something feels good and how to build more on that. The minute that I saw that in class, I like I went home to pick a boyfriend and said, we're trying this out. And he was like, and I was like, no, understand this with me. So I'm teaching him while I'm teaching myself, while I'm exploring and making sure that I understand what that is doing. And it was phenomenal and amazing, and has helped me, and then me in turn helping others through all of the work that I've done, down to running Facebook groups that say, you know, hey, you need to really study your own anatomy in a variety of ways in order to understand that, sure, if you shove something in there, that may not feel all that great. So instead, get it a little excited first. Stretch out those slinkies. Make sure that you have the full line of
yeah, it's fully engorged. Like that's how I've always explained it. Like you can feel it when like there's blood, like it's just super engorged, like everywhere. And it doesn't happen often. And then I always talk about the love languages where it starts earlier in the day. You don't just jump on someone and like you start touching ahead of time. You start whatever you need, the words, and you
it's
get someone
always
excited
building.
ahead of time. Yeah, building
Mm-hmm.
it up. It's building it up, especially for women. Some men don't understand that we need a lot of building up first.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had a guy tell me I
Absolutely.
had a small clitoris this week, and of course it's because he just
What?
tried to like start immediately, and I'm like, yeah, you didn't do anything to like get it excited and ready. So
My sister and I really hope she doesn't hear this, but my sister and I joke all the time that we were essentially born wet. When she was trying to leave her ex-husband, he'd be like, see, you're still into me, because you can get wet just by me touching you. And she was like, nope, go away. I can't help my family genes. So
yeah,
I do think that family genes might have a little bit to do with it,
or
in the way.
sorry, I was just gonna say because
No,
I'm the same
please.
way, and I think it's because my love language is touch. So anytime I'm touched a lot, it happens, especially if I'm interested in the person or
Oh,
touch, or
completely.
it could be genetics too, and maybe it's like a combo. But I've
Well,
definitely, I joke about that in my stand up too. So a
I can't
dentist
wait to
when
see your stand-up.
yeah, a dentist told me I had enough saliva for 4 people, and I was like, yeah, I think pretty sure it happens down there too. So that's
I
how.
will agree with you on the same thing. Um, but I think that just the way that our genes are built to pass things that help procreation, especially the way that those are passed, might have a little bit to do with it. But again, if you don't, if you don't have the predisposition to excite that end of the gene pool, it's never going to happen. So it's not just because of the genes. It's not just because somebody touched you. It has to, I think a lot of things, I'm going to call it comorbid just because that means it coexists, but it has to coexist in order to work. So completely agree on the love languages and having to build.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, we usually do 30 minutes, and I know it's like this is a really good topic, but we are coming to the end-ish. So if there's anything you want to like just reiterate or clarify or just really share.
I'll just say get to know your own body. Everyone is unique and individual. Same size does not fit all. Learn what makes your own body work, male and female. I had a boyfriend who had no idea about what his prostate could do for him, and had the most intense orgasms. And when I stopped seeing him, he still hits me up here and there. Hey, what do you think about me trying this? And I'm like, get to know your own body. We're done. Get to know with somebody else. Nobody else is open-minded. And I was like, well, that brings to what's really wrong with the world today is that no one is open-minded, and not no one. I hate absolute phrasing, but
a lot of people,
a lot of people are not willing to be open-minded enough, and I'm sorry that your orgasms suck. So if you're not open-minded, it's not going to be great.
Yeah,
it could always be better. That's what I look at. Everything could always be better. So why would you not want to go for that gold star? Why would you not want to go for better? Like it makes me crazy, and I tell my kids this all the time. Like, why are you satisfied with just the regular bottom of the barrel, barely making it work? Why are you satisfied with that? Why don't you want to make it better? And it doesn't have to be math. It can be orgasms. It doesn't have to be cleaning. It can be, about your body. Why wouldn't you want to make your body the most in tune that you can possibly make it?
Yeah. Well, I do have one, because you said you and your boyfriend like kind of practiced when you learned about the clitoris being longer and bigger than it was. So how did you practice it? Did he touch you like around it versus, like the lips or the, like where?
Yep.
Like,
so actually that's a great question, because I did just generalize it. But so it was using slimmer tools, slimmer toys. But I call it my toolbox. So all of my toys are in my toolbox. We would use slimmer things and go down like each side. So no stimulation at first and go down each side. And I'm like, whatever. That's not great. It's just whatever. And then with stimulation and going down one side, going down the other side, then full stimulation for all of the surface parts, and then using more toys to see making sure that it wasn't just him, because I actually get off better with people than toys, and I know that sometimes that's reversed. But it's, again, getting to know your body to see how much. Okay, and we would do, so how much penetration is too much, how much penetration is not long enough. Like I could practically, and this sounds crazy, but feel them growing all the way back, because I would have no canal stimulation at all. And the more that we stimulated the outside, the more stimulation I would get in the canal.
okay.
So at max stimulation for the outside ended up being max stimulation for the inside.
So it's pretty much simultaneous, like,
Mm-hmm.
One doing the other. So yeah. And I've had a couple episodes where people talk about this, and I did experiment a little myself, like after having that episode. So people hopefully go out and do this as well after this episode. And I would definitely love to have you on again. So now that you can fulfill your Dr. Ruth fantasies on this podcast anytime you want. But thank you again. I think a lot of people will get stuff from this, and we'll maybe do a part 2 when we do our poll, and maybe, get some feedback from people potentially, or just do a part 2 on something else. But thank you
absolutely.
again.
I realize I probably should have sent you some of the articles I used to base a lot of my research on ahead of time. So if we do a part 2, let me know. I'll send you the articles no matter what, just so that if anyone has a follow-up question to you, you can say, hey, go check out XYZ website or whatever it is. And again, I will point out that research is incredibly biased nowadays. So to research all sides, good, bad, ugly, because you're going to, the moment you stop learning, the moment you're dead. Inside, outside, whatever. If you stop trying to learn about it, you're dead.
Yeah, I agree. I have a love of learning, so I'm there with you. And I can post some of the articles into the description of this episode. So yeah, definitely give me the main ones that are on this, and we can have some more for later too. So,
excellent.
All right, thank you
wonderful
again.
to meet you and be on the show with
Yes.
you. And if there's anything I can do to help out, I would be very willing.
All right, awesome. And thanks everyone for listening, and hope you loved the episode. And if you do, be sure to rate it and tell your friends about it, especially if they're the type that hasn't had the best orgasms ever. They would like to hear this. All right, thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Frank Talk, Sex and Dating educates.